Well, Tim, are you ready to give a downbeat for this thing?
Certainly am. I'm ready, Scott, whenever
Okay.
you.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. It's so great to see you. Hope you had a fantastic week. As always, we want to recognize our presenting sponsors, Consumer and GIA. And we also want to encourage you to join us on our uh, media platforms. Cecilia, you want to jump in and say something about that?
I just want to see everybody involved in our private slam group on a daily. I know that exciting things are happening in your lives every day, that there are priceless stories and those memorable moments with your students. And I hope that with our family, that we become a place where you want to celebrate those moments, or in those hard times that we are a group that you can reach out to when you just need somebody else's advice or want someone else's opinion, or just need someone to lift you up and give you a little pat on the back when you need it. So please join us on our Facebook group and follow us and share, like, post, all those things that the young people do, as they say.
That's awesome. Tim, you want to talk a little bit about our July 8th and 9th crafting culture event?
Absolutely. We've already got lots of people signed up. My concern is making sure there's room for our SLAM members. So if you're planning to come, or please jump on board right now before all the slots are taken. And know it will be an incredible time. It just will be, guaranteed.
Yep. And you can go to slamleadership.org and get that information for our crafting culture event. When we absolutely love to have you. Tim, you want to give us your words of wisdom?
Yeah, and they're going to be a little different tonight. I had the opportunity to be in Puerto Rico at the NASMD conference, National Association of School Music Dealers. And as I was telling the guys before everybody jumped on, everything was about recruitment and retention. I went to as many sessions as I could, and that was the theme. So your dealers, if you want to know what their number one priority is, from perspective of what you do, it's recruitment and retention, which of course translates to numbers. Now, this is really cool, because what it tied into was what we're talking about tonight. So just a little poem. Making your way in the world today, it really takes everything you've got, particularly after the pandemic. And maybe it's time to take a break from all your worries, because it sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see that everybody has troubles that are just the same. You want to be where everybody knows your name. It's not going to happen more than in the rehearsal room. And that's what they all were saying. The teachers that make a difference are the ones that have created a culture for their groups. And of course, the lyrics come from Cheers. And I think that was one of the whole themes, where everybody gathered and they just could sense that other people were where they are. The great Pogo quote we all remember, "I've met the enemy and he is me." So that gives us a lot of space to move and to be challenged and to decide how we're going to embrace those challenges. And I had the great opportunity on yesterday, to work with Steve, our guest tonight, Steve Meyer, and you are in for a great time. He hit it so far out of the park, we're never going to find it. So, Steve, we're so glad you're here. I'll kick it back to you, Scott, and those are the words of wisdom for this week.
Thank you, Tim. That's awesome. I am going to try to pull up the screen just for a second, because I want you to see Taylor's video, but I want to tell you my little tip for the week. So there are people who are searching to be comfortable when they need to be searching for greatness. And if you believe that we were created to make a difference, and we were put here on this planet to make a difference in the life of someone else, I certainly believe that, being a music educator is a calling, and the fact that we get a chance to make a difference in the life of young people is just one of the greatest gifts of life. But it kind of goes back to a quote that I read by Roy Bennett. And the quote is this: believe in yourself. You're braver than you think. more talented than you know, and capable of more than you can imagine. And if you think about the fact that we have the ability to make a difference with young people, it just doesn't get any better than that. Taylor, in our tenet for motivation, says it this way, and it's a different spin, but it's a fantastic spin. I love his words on this.
So one of my favorite parables when thinking about motivation is an old Cherokee parable about an elder who was trying to instruct one of the younger members of his tribe, and he told the boy, inside every single person, there are two wolves waging in a constant battle. One is egotistical, self-driven, self-preservationalist, caring only for what's going to be best for the person that it's in. And the other wolf is more altruistic. It's thinking about the world beyond, the people beyond, the connections being made, all of humanity outside of you. And the boy, very intelligently, asked, well, if this war is being waged in every one of us, who wins the battle? And the elder used the famous phrase, the one you feed. And for me, this is such an important point to bring up when we talk about motivation, because a lot of people think about being as trying to unearth the best version of ourselves or the truest version of ourselves, or trying to uncover who we were meant to be. And for me, I've always kind of conceptualized it in a different way. I think every minute, every second, every hour, every day, we are becoming someone different than we were yesterday by every decision that we make, every thought that passes through our head, and every word that leaves our body. So rather than think about uncovering ourselves, I like to think about who we're building ourselves into. So when I try to make decisions with students, when I try to make decisions with my family, when I try to make decisions just internally, I'm trying to ask myself, which wolf am I feeding with this decision? Am I feeding the wolf that's thinking about Taylor? Or am I feeding the wolf that's going to allow me in the future to be more altruistic, to be more considerate about other people? I think if you think about the parable in this way, it can really make more simple some of the complex decisions in our life and help build so that tomorrow it's even easier to feed the right wolf than it was today.
Tim, you want to give us some other additional thoughts about feeding the wolf?
Well, we all have choice. And again, when all of these people that I heard this past week talking, because we were all saying what makes a great band director, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it all came back to role modeling. I mean, they just squeezed the water out and said, it's who is on that podium. And I asked the question, if you could pick out 2 or 3 of your very best band directors and clone them, and orchestra directors and choir directors, would you do it and put them in every school? And it was unanimous, hands in the air. So that's how important you are. You make a difference in people's lives. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we are absolutely blessed to have Steve Meyer be with us tonight. And he's the director of bands at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. He's a GIA Meredith author. And he also gets the opportunity to teach about 150 music majors. And I know I was there, a year or 2 ago, and went into a room of music education majors, and it was packed in a room that was really too small to have that many music majors, and it was fantastic. So I know that they're doing fantastic work at Northern Arizona University. But Steve, we're going to turn the floor over to you. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to your words.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I apologize. My voice is gone. I spent the week actually in Alaska. I had the opportunity, I teach at a fine arts camp every summer in Sitka. It's really incredible. When we talk about motivation, this is a comprehensive fine arts camp. So it's music, visual arts, theater, and music, visual arts, theater, dance. And the faculty are just world-renowned experts. The painting teacher was the background painter on Beauty and the Beast, so has all the background paintings. The dance teacher was one of the most renowned Fosse experts in the country. And so the executive director of this camp brings in all these amazing artists all over the summer, and we teach. But these kids are the only clarinet player in their village in Nome, Alaska. So it's really one of the most motivating things I do in the summer, not just to be able to share. I get to flex my middle school and high school teaching chops. I told this story yesterday, but the first day last year, someone was like, Steve, what's the upside down note? And I was like, that's a B, okay. So that's where we are. So I had the opportunity, they actually got a grant to go and teach some directors and music educators in Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka. So I was teaching middle school choir, I was teaching jazz band, high school. It was really amazing, but yeah, definitely have been feeling that back in the public schools. So it's really amazing to be here. I believe in everything this organization does and have been so inspired by all these people here that, just talking about motivation, as Taylor said, or as we all know, it all starts with us. And, some days are better than others. I will tell you, today is one of those extrinsically motivated days. Thanks to Zevia energy drinks, or whatever it is. Today is one of those days where I keep making deals with myself. Like, okay, if I fold the laundry, I can watch episode 3 of Ted Lasso. If I go to the grocery store, I can watch episode 4. Like, you have to get things done, and it just feels like someone's pulling me. So we all have those days. And you just have to find what works, and knowing that the other days will be around. But one of the things that I want to talk about in thinking about motivation is when you teach college, it's the biggest difference from teaching high school and middle school to teaching college is that I am a very small piece of the pie in college. I see my students twice a week for 2.5 hours. You don't have the band room, the orchestra room, the choir room where they can hang out. It's the rehearsal hall for everyone. It's the woodwind methods classroom. It's et cetera, jazz band room. You're a small piece of the pie because they have theory professor, music ed professor, history professor, studio professor, etc. So it's really easy to get into a rut in college of walk into the rehearsal room, rehearse, leave. And I never see these students. I never get in touch. So that was the biggest difference and eye-opening experience for me of how do I create the culture that I had in my high school band room in this college environment? How do I how can I get out of this process of just kind of like rinse, repeat? And so I kind of have really thought about that the last 5 years of teaching college, and how do I create this safe space for the students? I want them to be able to come in and make mistakes. And I tell them at the beginning of the semester, if you are actively trying to find excuses to not come to my rehearsal, then we need to have a discussion. And so I put that out there, but I stole a lot from what Michael Haithcott does. I was so fortunate to study with him at Michigan. And I put in the chat, did it send the attachment? I just put a whole bunch of ideas that I'm just going to go through of things that I've done throughout the years. One of the things that I stole from Mike was he would do 10-minute meet and greet appointments with every student of the symphony band. And it really tried to break down that like Great Oz syndrome. He's a very, his presence is known, and so he would sit down with every single student for 10 to 15 minutes. He would have his meet and greet appointments at the beginning of every semester, and then follow up with those. And so I encourage you to do that. I think if I were in your position, I would really try to go through and who are the students that are always hanging out in your room, and then who are the ones that are not, and then force them to sign up for a meet and greet appointment. And I put in there, some of the questions that I ask. When you teach college, where are you from? What are your favorite subjects in school? What is your favorite part about band? What has been the best musical experience that you have ever had? What do you do outside of band? And that's the kicker. I want to know that, one time I learned that one of my clarinet players is ranked number 6 in the world in Super Smash Brothers. And he pays for his entire college education because they fly him to Vegas, and he wins like $30,000 playing Super Smash Brothers, pays for his education, and comes back and practices. Like, it's wild what you can learn about students and the secrets behind them of things that you would never know if I never had this opportunity. And then, anything that you would like to ask of me, and this is my 5th year doing it, but I will say it really changes the culture of the room immediately, because they know you're a real person and that you start to see them for who they are and not just the instrument that they're holding. And so I really encourage you to do that and maybe think about that. just like during your planning period or after school, or just, 10-minute meet and greets, and see what happens. You can even do it with your parent booster organization if you really want to. We have parent teacher conferences, sure, but maybe there's a couple parents that, they're seniors and you've never actually met them. Just like, hey, can you stop by for 15 minutes? It would just be great to talk with you and see. All they can say is no, right? And Tim, what did you say yesterday? All they can say is no, but that's where you're starting. I think that's what it
I
was.
said you're already at no.
You're already at no. Yeah, I love that. I've always lived by, you can always say no. They can always say no. But yeah, that's where you're starting from, is no. But what if you have that chance to discover that little nugget of the student that you can then connect to whatever piece of repertoire that you're using? And I think that's the more important thing. I use that knowledge in rehearsal, if they're weightlifters or they're whatever in Super Smash Brothers. So 10-minute meet and greet appointments has really changed the culture of my rehearsal, and what we've done. Oops, I spelled creating wrong. I didn't want to crest a playlist. Sorry about that. Just threw that together. This is something I just did this semester, and it was actually pretty fascinating. I learned from Colleen Conway, who's a renowned music ed professor at Michigan. She didn't do evaluations at the end of the semester. Like in college, we always have to do that, but like 3 students do it. They only do it if they really like you or really hate you, right? But it's part of our tenure profile. So I learned from Colleen that she would do mid-semester evaluations. And she's like, I would rather know right now if I can change something rather than the end of the semester when it's over. So I started doing that after every concert and taking the last 15 minutes of rehearsal and doing a half sheet of paper of giving every student an opportunity for their voice to be heard. And then what I do is I have one student, usually it's my graduate student, I leave the room while they do it, and they talk via the graduate student or like the section leader, whoever, drum major, whatever. I come back in the room and they tell me what they really enjoy about Wind Symphony. What do you want to keep doing? And what do you want to change? And they'll be like, can you send, you don't, they're brutally honest, but it allows for the graduate student to say it rather than the student, and kind of that safe place. But what happens over time is they start defending each other. So they're like, well, we want to play harder music. And then they're like, well, you need to practice more. And there's this really interesting dialogue that happens when you're not in the room. But also it's really revealing to me. They're like, can you think about the percussion setup more as you transition between pieces? They'll give you a lot of insight into what is happening and what they really like and what they enjoy. And you just have to put your ego down and enjoy it. But if they see that there's a difference, then all of a sudden they're going to buy into your program even more. But as part of that, for this last semester, I had them write down 5 pieces that they would put on their individual playlist. Songs that defined them as a person, they triggered or activated a great memory, and they spoke to them as a musician or a person. And so I created it all on Spotify and I shared it with them. And then, we always have a 10-minute break in rehearsal. And what do they all do? Get out their phones. And instead, I would put on a playlist and I would have them guess who it was. And then the person whose song it was, have them share, like, I picked this. Of the 213 songs that were on there, 3% of them were classical music, which is fascinating. I learned about bands like Avenged Sevenfold, never heard of them. But then there were kids that you're like, whoa, you listen to this? Oh my gosh. Like the quiet bassoon player who's into death metal, that was a kicker, So it's very revealing. But again, you can use that music to how is that going to apply to Candide, whatever piece you're working on by Gerard Hall, Julie Giroux, how does it translate? Music is music, and it's either a song or a dance, so if we can connect that in some way, that's been really helpful. I will say, I was doing a really quick story. I was doing an honor band, and my watch, Siri went off, and I said something. My watch interpreted it as to play the playlist. My phone was in front of the room, and the playlist went off, and the most heinous song came on the playlist that I had not vetted, with every single curse word you can imagine. It was all of them just in like 30 seconds. And the whole flute section was like, oh, I texted my colleague and I was like, Brent, I will hope you enjoy being the director of bands at NAU because my career is done. Thank you. So anyway, vet the songs before you do that. And turn off Siri on your watch. Okay, choose the music on the next concert. I did this during the pandemic. It was amazing. I gave them 3 options for an opener, 3 options for a ballad, 3 options for a quote unquote fun piece, you know, like Star Wars, Moana, Encanto, whatever. And then 3 options for a master, kind of like a bulk work. They listened to each of the pieces and they rated them, and we had a discussion about what songs they wanted to play. And I've done that every year since. If you want to talk about motivation, why not let them choose the songs, but give them the parameters to do? And that really has been helpful in the motivation of why we are doing this piece. I've also been really explicit of, you know, we're doing Candide and Fascinating Ribbons on this next concert. I've been explicit at the beginning of what you're going to get out of this piece. And if by the end you have not achieved this, then, you know, that's on me. So have the music, why not have them pick the music for the next concert? Again, with some of the parameters of what they can do. I learned from some colleagues in Texas about mini bands. If you are in the position now of making, you know, where you have said everything 20 times that it needs to be shorter and you've done all the things, mini bands are the best thing that you can do. What that basically is dividing your group by soprano, alto, tenor, bass. You can put random combinations of students together. You can put like the best clarinet with the 3rd trumpet player with the percussionist, and you can send them off. And I would use like the custodian's closet, whatever classroom was available. The social studies teacher had an off period. Great, mini band A, you're going into the social studies classroom, bring a stand. And so what you do in that moment is, I would say the older that they are, the smaller the group should be, or start bigger, divided into 2. What I did with my wind symphony actually on the last concert is they walked into rehearsal and there were 2 wedges, and I divided the group exactly in half with the percussion right in the middle. And the percussion love it. They finally get to move to a different spot. But we were doing Downey Overture, and group A in percussion played, and group B had to say 3 things they enjoyed, they listened to, and then 3 things they would work on. But also I was trying to get my students to move and like communicate more. So I was like, who are you watching during that performance? Right. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, Austin was so fun to watch because he was moving to the music. It looked like he was having fun. So it's not just about what they're hearing, but also what they're seeing. So you can do that in the rehearsal room if you don't have space, but A would perform, then B would perform. And in that moment, you know, you talk about motivation. Everyone always asks me, how did you get your students to practice? Well, it doesn't matter if I tell them to practice, right? It doesn't tell them if you matter. What matters is they have it in them, you know, the why. So if they stand in front of their peers and they're playing that lick from Downey Overture and they don't know it, whoo, that's the great motivation to go and practice for Thursday. Because everyone can see them faking their way through it, you know, and so it's such a great way to get that last 20% in, like the last 2 weeks when they're really confident on a piece. So I would highly recommend doing that. Assign a leader, assign someone, if you do this at first, assign a leader that can, then you give them a specific task. You're going to put on the metronome, you're going to put on the drone, you're going to do these fundamentals, you're going to listen to these couple of things, and then allow them to give feedback and then come back and perform for each other. And just stand there and just let them go through with this critical response process I'll talk about in just a second. It really truly is one of the best things that I have done to really build peer accountability. And the first time will be rough. The second time, those students work their tails off. And so what I would have one group, and that again gets me back down into hearing the individuals. And then I would be like, okay, practice that for 30 seconds. And I'd run to the social studies class. How you doing? Let me hear this. Great. Then run back and listen to the other group. So then, and then they just rotate the next day on one of the pieces. There's a lot of variations you can do with that. But again, it's about highlighting and allowing them to perform the music more than just one time for assessment and pre-assess, or 2 times for pre-assessment. So getting them the opportunities through the mini bands. Okay, the last 2 things, the critical response process. Has anybody ever heard of this from Liz Lerman? She's a renowned choreographer. Wonderful. This has been my new fascinating research topic. Michael Turner, who's a really famous judge for DCI and was like the one that incorporated dance into marching band. He had this book in BOA San Antonio, and it was called From Dinner to Dance, Providing Valuable Critical Feedback. And it's by Liz Lerman, who's a renowned choreographer. She has a 4-step critical response process that she uses for her dance students. If you look on the document, this is the outline of it. And I've started using it actually for my conducting students. If you've ever been to a conducting seminar, what usually happens is you get up there with a goal, and then and then the instructor goes a completely different direction. And you're like, but that's not what I've prepared. I don't know. Oh, okay. And this really resonated with me, this 4-step process. And what she does is there's the artist, the responder, and the facilitator. The artist performs. Then immediately afterward, all of the responders dictate to the artist what is meaningful, authentic, memorable, what is the other words? Meaningful, authentic, engaging. And it's not because like is too pedestrian. I liked that. Blah. No, what was memorable in that performance was, what was engaging in that performance was. It gets students to really start to quantify their own process of what they heard. So it immediately starts with positivity, right? So if you do these mini bands, this is kind of what I would do, is tell them something that was positive, authentic, meaningful, engaging. And then the second step, this is the kicker. The artist gets to ask questions. So if they're doing an excerpt, they would be like, or they're doing a mini band on a march, they'd be like, okay, can the responders tell me about the tempo? Was the tempo steady? So what that does is put into the idea of the responder, then what that person is actually thinking about. They're not thinking about tone quality, even though they always should be, right? But they're thinking about timing. Okay, so they get to dictate how the responses go. And I think that's the key of this process that I really love, especially working with conductors. So the artist asks questions based on what they're working on. Then the responder gets to ask non-biased questions. So they don't get to say, I didn't like the tempo that you chose. Nope. They get to say, tell me about why you chose that tempo. It's a non-biased question. And then they get to think about and put those ideas in the artists. And then the last step is the responders get to go, I have an opinion about your tempo. Would you like to hear it? And so again, it puts the ball in the artist's court about, you can say no, and my graduate students have said, no, today's not the day to talk about my breathing, Dr. Meyer. I don't want to hear about my wrist. I know my wrist is bad. I'm like, okay, next, or whatever it is. So it's a nugget of information you could probably incorporate as we talk about motivation and culture, put the ball in their court, and maybe this 4-step process will go there. Last 2 things really quickly. I studied with Jeff Nelson at Indiana University, and on this website, he has amazing PDFs. One thing that I always use is the what's your story? So if you're doing, I don't know, we're doing Fascinating Ribbons by Joan Tower right now. It's a characterization. It's putting you in the seat of the creative director, the choreographer, the set design, the costume designer, and really getting students to be creative with what they're doing. If there's anything that COVID taught me, it's when you take my rehearsals away as a college director, what am I actually teaching? I don't teach theory. I don't teach history. I don't teach composition. But I'm like, what do I teach? I don't know what I teach. Listening, okay. So I was like, I can teach creativity. I can teach imagination. How do you interpret music? How do you vocalize and respond to music? And so this what's your story really could be a really fun activity at the end of a process to get them thinking about it. I'll never forget when I was at Harrison with David and we did Give Us the Stay, that opening clarinet solo. I had students I had them write lyrics to the clarinet solo at the beginning. And it was so amazing. Like I gave them a copy of the part and I was like, you have to write lyrics. And it was amazing. And then the day of the performance, I was like, think about those lyrics. And this is what you want to translate to the audience. So getting that idea of sharing creativity, imagination, and connection is great. And then lastly, if you find yourself bored or need some technology, we did an Audacity project. Every student recorded the sound of their signature. So, you know, it's like, and and then we did it in Audacity, and we did that as a loop, as their ostinato. So it was like, and then they did a found sound. One of my students actually recorded the sound of a toilet flushing and put it over his sound signature and then redid it. And then they had to play something from an excerpt of their music and use Audacity to kind of spin it and create like a 1-minute piece. And so those are things that I've done that have gotten myself out of the process of rehearsal to create motivation, pure accountability, connection with each other, connection to the music, while also motivating them to really give their best performance of these pieces. So hopefully one of those is useful to you, maybe even tomorrow or as you're getting into testing season, where maybe, you know, you won't see your kids till May. So yeah, really fun to share with you all. Again, I stole these from all other people and just tried them. They're not great the first time, but the second or third time, they really stick. And then the students are like, even my college students, where, you know, you're always trying to prepare them professionally, but they're like, can we rehearse in a circle again? We love that. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. They're like, can we do that Audacity project again? It was so fun to hear what students came up with. And they'll write that on their mid-semester review to me. And so, you know, some of those outside of the box things can really promote all the ideas, amazing ideas that this organization you're all talking about. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Steve, it's fantastic. I love the connection, the collaboration, the buy-in, the culture, and the fact that you gave us one strategy after another, boom, 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 and you also shared it with us. It's also something we can take and digest and use. It's been fantastic. Any questions for Steve? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to go into breakout rooms. And so, Steve, you going to join us on one of the breakout rooms?
Absolutely. I'll kind of bounce back and forth.
Yeah. So if you got questions for him, we can do it at the breakout rooms as well. That was awesome. It's fantastic. So we're going to go into 2 breakout rooms, and Brian Christian's going to be breakout room number 1, and Paul Kyle's going to be breakout room number 2. Breakout room number 1 are the odd birthdays this time. So 1, 3, 5, 7 month. And breakout room number 2 is going to be even birthdays, right? But you really can go to whichever breakout room you'd like. That's kind of how it works. David, do you have any other thoughts that we need to know before we jump into the breakout rooms? You're muted.
Didn't hit quick enough. No, we will give you a 2-minute warning. So have a great time and be brave in your small space.
Yeah, so yeah, our topics are going to be, what are some strategies you can use to create a safe, brave space in your culture? That's our topic for tonight. All right, Tim, you want to go to number 2 and I'll go to number 1? Let's do it. Okay, cool.
Yes, Kathy, absolutely. Great observation there. Anyone else?
Well, Brian, I'll jump in for just a second. As I'm doing some mentoring and we're talking about creating that safe space, I think the important thing is that has to be established day one. And so the students that violate that trust, there's repercussions for that, and they understand why it's important this way. Because with some of the groups that I'm struggling with now, of course, they bring you in to help you get ready for contests, and then they want you to stay and give more help. And then some of the problems we're dealing with is they've allowed it to fester for so long, then the behavior that they don't want, now all of a sudden it's like, why is this a problem now in March and April? So just creating that routine and that groundwork from the very beginning and make that a non-negotiable. This will be a safe space. Everybody is welcome. You will treat others with respect is huge. And that goes a long way. Then once you have that, as everybody knows, then the musical piece can advance that much further and that much quicker.
Steve, that is a fantastic comment. And I am reminded, I think I learned this from Dr. Tim, but be sure if you're experimenting, trying some of these things, praise in public after they do this, criticize in private. You know, take them to the office if they did something incorrectly or kind of goofy or whatnot. Let it go. You know, clap, get everybody clapping for them, and then later on, you know, if there's an opportunity, if it's significant, you can say, you know what, you might want to have tried this or something like that, but do that kind of thing in private. Anyone else? I'll chime in a little bit with what Steve said. I totally agree. Do it early so that you set the standard and that it's okay. I make myself vulnerable early on. I love to sing. I won't call myself a vocalist, but I love to sing. I've led worship in our church many years, and even when I was a small child and in high school, I led singing at our church. So I have no fear and I have no ego. So I love to sing in front of my kids, which happens all the time. And my voice is probably going to crack at some point. And so I just make a big joke about it when it does. And I say, yeah, one of these days I'll get through puberty. And they all just like, you know, I mean, they don't know whether to laugh or to be shocked that I said the puberty word or whatever. But then it's like, okay, everything is, you know, all good. If his voice can crack, if he can make fun of himself. And then the other thing that I do is I do solemnly promise that I will not make fun of anyone's voice or anyone's cracked voice or anything like that. We just make that pledge to each other from the very beginning. So those are two things that I've done. Has anyone else thought of something while we've been talking here? Kathy?
Got one. So as music educators, we want our kids to be engaged. We want our kids to be participants in the ensemble, more so than just, okay, get your horn to your face and let's play. But then the minute it starts to get even a little bit rowdy, we're such control freaks, especially as a band director. We're like, nope, stop talking, everybody get quiet. So we send them this terribly mixed message of, we want you to be involved and we want you to take ownership, but don't talk. That doesn't make any sense. So I've come to find recently that I use the word, let's find our focus, or let's refocus. And so they get to chattering, and then it starts to get a little bit out of hand because I've got freshmen and sophomores teaching the third band. And I'm like, all right, that's great. Now let's refocus. And they're like, oh, okay, that's what we got to do now. So it takes away that mixed message. It gives them the permissions to be themselves. It gives them the permissions to participate properly, appropriately. It teaches them what appropriate participation is like. And then when that time is done and we've got to get back to business, it helps them get back to business. But it's taken me like 20 years to figure that one out.
That's great, Kathy. And that reminds me, I have, I don't know who I stole this from, but I have told kids, it's okay. We'll get loose a little bit, but then when it is time to find the focus, I'll say, you got to be able to turn the switch. You know, if we're going to allow this, you got to be able to turn it off just as easy as you turn it on. And that little switch, if you can make it something physical or mental or whatever, but they relate to that pretty well. Something else that I wanted to say earlier that I forgot is when I've made myself vulnerable, I've also told them following that. And when I say that, I'm talking about something that I did wrong or stupid or a mistake I made or whatever. This is what I learned from it. So you're not only modeling that you're human, but you're modeling that you can produce something positive from this experience. What did I learn? What direction am I going now? And I'm going to try to not do that ever again, and it's just a great way to be a human being in front of the kids. Anyone else? I feel like I'm trying to hurry through this. I don't know how much.
Real quick is I allow my students to sometimes let me be, get on the hot seat. If they were having trouble with playing something, usually on my podium is either my saxophone, which is my secondary, or I've got some mallets because I love to go back and play and transcribe stuff on the mallets because I'm a percussionist. Shout out to the percussionist. But in a way to make them feel safer and to make them understand that it's okay to mess up, I'll let them choose which instrument I'm going to demonstrate on. And normally they'll choose the saxophone because that's my secondary. And I'll sometimes, intentionally or unintentionally, I'll mess up. And okay, all right, guys, no problem. Let's do it again. Here we go. Play it with me this time. And I'll invite them. And maybe if that student is a little shy about even playing with me, I'll invite another student who I know is confident, and we'll work through a passage together. And eventually, and I've seen this happen each year and year out, kids start to develop a lot more confidence, and then they'll start to volunteer to want to play, as long as we've created that safe culture of acceptance. And it's okay to mess up. I love that quote about it being the mess up room or the mistake room. I actually need to make a meme or something about that and put it on my board. So I love that. Thanks for all the sharing, guys.
Thank you, Marcus. Trisha.
Hello. So I have as most of you know, I have a slightly different situation and a very much smaller group of folks to work with. But I think the things that I try to do to make it a safe space are to make sure that they're always heard. Even if I can't help them solve the problem, even if I can't fix whatever's going on for them, just listen so that they know that somebody actually is listening and hears them, not just and keep the confidences that come from that where you can. And of course, the biggest one for me is acknowledging my own mistakes. Like if I have done something that is making somebody else have to fix it, or if I've done something that's doing that, that's big. It's really big, so that they know that even when you grow up, you do dumb things from time to time and you can just get around it. And it kind of normalizes that idea of experimentation and failure not being the end of your universe.
That's great, Trisha. Thank you. It's often easy to be beleaguered by all the things that we're responsible for as music directors. I came across a quote by John Wooden, one of the winningest basketball coaches of all time. It's not one that I was familiar with. And he talked about knowledge is not enough to get the desired results, that you must have that elusive ability to teach and to motivate. And I think I've shared before with some of you that, man, I spent a lot of time trying to be a master pedagogue on instruments and try to be an awesome conductor, and sometimes missing the forest for the trees. And that John Wooden quote is a little bit heavy, but I do think it's the magic bullet for us in the people business as well as the music. It's not enough for me to be really great as a skilled bands person or to be a really skilled conductor. Those are helpful, but it's not enough. That next element is that people thing. And that some of it is that creating the opportunity for communication as well as creating that safe space. So I offer that out to have one more element to think about, but I do think it helps it build that three-legged stool so that we can be good in all those elements. We've probably all heard bands that have great connections but don't have the musical skills, or have good musical skills but the kids aren't impacted or moved by it because there isn't that connection. So finding that magic elixir and that balance is worth it. And this is great fodder. All of the things that you mentioned are terrific, which is why I keep the notebook close by to keep writing all those notes. So thank you for those contributions. And thanks for throwing things in the chat. I feel like I need to keep my phone by and take a picture of all those different elements as well. Anything anyone else wants to add in before we get kicked back into the large group again?
Hey, Matt, I see you have your hand up. Did you have something?
Yeah, it's kind of a part of what everyone said, but I think that our students are going to look to us for how we react to anything, whether that's making a mistake, or showing up late to class, or making making an apology, things like that. I mean, we're so influential because we spend so much time around them that they're really going to look to us as people of how to react to situations and emulate that.
Well said, Matt. All right, everyone. Good to spend some time with you. Well,
Welcome back, everybody. As we're coming back into the main session before Tim and Scott arrive, how about just taking one aha moment or one takeaway from your breakout room and throw that into the chat for us? There's some research out there that says if we immediately after learning something, well, speak it to someone or to write it down, then our probability of retaining that the next day is significantly higher. So throw an aha or an idea from the chat, from your breakout room in the chat. We have more folks coming in the room. You know, research says if we write something down or we share it with someone with immediately after we learn something, we have a higher probability of retaining it the next day and beyond. So if there's an aha moment or someone's shared something, go ahead and dump that into the chat for us right now and give yourself a shot at maybe remembering it tomorrow after that caffeine fix that Steve's going to share with you.
Speaking of Steve, can you, since everybody wasn't in, both breakout sessions, obviously, can you share those 3 things that we were talking about?
Sure. This is directly taken from, again, the Michael Haithcock speech at the beginning of the semester and kind of put into my own phrasing. But I tell my students at the beginning of every semester, you're people first, musicians second, and students third. And I always try to live by that in the way that I react to certain things. So if they're not in rehearsal, then I immediately send them an email 3 minutes after rehearsal. Like, hey, I saw that you weren't in rehearsal. I'm just making sure you're okay. You were very much missed and I hope to see you on Thursday or Tuesday. And then they'll react and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. My car didn't start and whatever. And it's a recognition that, I have these college students are like trying to figure out how to eat, how to pay their bills, how to balance work and life without an external force. And so the way that I react, I have to remind myself of those 3 other people first, musician second, and students third. And then when they aren't there, making sure that they know that they were missed. And if I taught high school, like what I was doing in Alaska, if they're 5th period, you can see that they're not there. And you're like, okay, whatever. But then I would still email that person and be like, hey, I saw that you were out today. Just want to let you know, just want to make sure you're okay and you're feeling all right. We missed you and hope to see you tomorrow. And then they know that you really care, like that their presence was missed and you're creating that space where they want to be there. When we played at Miss Midwest and Chris Martin came and he goes, Steve, these students have no idea what Midwest is, but they just don't want to disappoint you. And I was like, I have no idea what that means or how I did that, but thank you, Chris Martin. And I've really reflected on that of like what that actually means, in striving towards a goal and creating a community where it's not just about me disappointing me, but it's disappointing each other.
Well, and the other part about that, Steve, too, is like there are students who are thinking, do they notice me? And so not only are you making that connection, but there's value there. I mean, there's so many positives to doing that. That's really, really, really cool.
Yeah.
Paul, do you want to share anything from your breakout room?
Sure. There were a lot of really great and concrete examples about how the different teachers create that connection and create that safe space, whether it's having a Monday talk about what went well with the week or creating space for students to share and feel valued. There were just a lot of really good examples that were inspiring.
Awesome. Well, Tim, we are getting to the end of our time together. This always just flies by. It's amazing.
I have a question for Steve, because we again got you captured. Would you please come back and join us again soon?
Absolutely. This was so much fun. And thank you. Thank you all for the invitation and the honor. I'm happy to help however I can.
Bravo.
Yes, you're fantastic.
Tim.
Try to spread the word a little bit more in whatever ways I can, or stupid videos that I can make if you saw the video.
Which is fantastic.
My Elizabeth Green paint the wall exercises.
So we're coming to the end of our time together. Just a couple of things real quick. If you believe that what we're doing on Sunday nights is making a difference to teachers, I can already tell you it is. We have just story after story after story. Please share this with your colleagues, have them go to slamleadership.org and join us. Brian, jump in.
I just wanted to thank everybody who gave input in these breakout sessions. I was a little bit nervous that I was going to have to, keep that afloat. And man, you guys did a great job. So keep up the good work on that. It's great.
Cecilia.
I just want to throw this out there. If anyone has a student teacher right now, and you are looking for a gift for them, instead of just giving them a baton, give them a membership to Slam. It's only $10. And it will last from now through their first year of teaching. And hopefully you have gained a lot from being a part of this organization. And yeah, they will stand to gain so much from being a part of the family. And tell your colleagues, $10. I mean, if you're going to give them a Starbucks gift card, give them something that will last week after week after week.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Any other comments? Well, Tim, you want to give us our closing words?
Well, first of all, as always, thanks for your time, your most valuable commodity. Thanks again to Steve. And I think I always try to put it in the letter afterwards, but our staff and board of directors are just the most phenomenal people in the world. So let's all give them a good hand just for being who they are and ramming this thing forward. It's being carved out of the side of a mountain. And as Pogo said, let's make sure that enemy that lives inside our voice, those two little demons that talk all the time, that we take charge and feed the right wolf, because that will be the one that will become the alpha wolf for all of us and for all of our students and the people around us.
And we're here for each other, so don't hesitate during the week to reach out to each other. Keep this collaboration going. That's what we're about. We want to lock arms with you. Hope you have a fantastic week. I'm going to leave you with the quote that I shared earlier. Believe in yourself. You're braver than you think, more talented than you know, and capable of more than you can imagine. Have a fantastic week. Thank you for all that you do for young people each and every day. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Our guest next week is Alex Kaminsky from Vandercook College of Music, and our tenant next week is Character. So hope to see you then.